the 1990 RPG showdown is winding down, and here we have the last major entrant into the competition. The Ys series was very successful at this point, but most of that success was from Japanese computer systems, where it was the definitive action RPG. The Famicom versions have basically been an afterthought. There was a port of Ys I that had been released almost 2 years prior to this, but it was a pretty bad port. You'd really want to play Ys on any other platform. And Ys II was released on computers even before the Famicom port of Ys I. And 6 months before this Famicom release, Ys 1 and 2 had been bundled together for a CD release for the PC Engine. In fact, the Famicom version is the last time that Ys 2 will be released independently of Ys 1. From this point on, all of the many re-releases bundle the two games together as one. So the deck was really stacked against this Famicom entry. But how is the port? After the incredibly weak port of Ys 1, I was genuinely surprised to find that this one was good. I'd still play any of the other Ys 2 ports by preference, but the problems with this version of Ys 2 all come from it being a version of Ys 2. Ys 2 picks up straight from the ending of the first game. In a very long opening cinematic, our hero Adol is swept out from the tower that he was climbing to the lost continent of Ys, flying high above the earth. He's found by a young woman who takes him back to the starting village, and from there Adol continues to pursue the evil that has plagued the world. One of the big tasks you had in the original Ys was to collect a bunch of scriptures. And in Ys 2, your very first task is to return all of those books to their respective goddesses. The first dungeon containing all of the statues you have to find is right there. The catch is, you have to grind a lot before you can even take those first steps. Combat in Ys is handled by bumping into enemies. When you bump into somebody, you'll do a bit of damage, and if the enemy is lined up with you, then you'll take some damage as well. It's often referred to as bump combat because you just bump into the enemy over and over again. But in this port of Ys 2, you can't meet the enemies square. It's not just a matter of colliding with them head-on. If you strike them dead center from behind or the sides, you take damage and they don't. What you really have to do is meet them slightly offset, and when you do that, you can even go straight at the enemies. And as long as you're pushing in a direction, the damage will keep occurring, even if you're pressed up against a wall. In the starting area, you get about 2 experience points per kill, and the quantity of enemies that you'll encounter is not particularly deep. To get past this first area, you have to defeat some enemies guarding a chest. They don't take damage until you're level 3. To reach level 3, you have to get 300 experience points. So you have to defeat 150 enemies before you're allowed to leave the starting area, and enemies rarely spawn more than one at a time. I played for more than an hour, and I managed to reach the first boss, but I was too low level to actually do any damage. It took me more than half an hour before I could get out of the starting map. So you have to grind like mad if you're going to make any kind of progress at all in this game. Recovering health is simple enough. Just stand out in sunlight for a little while. Or you can talk to one of the goddess statues. When you're in a cave, that's your best bet. At least you can save anywhere and at any time. Well, except when you're fighting a boss. Hit select to bring up a menu, and that's where you can check out your stats, change your equipment, use an item, or save and load a game. A positive change is how magic has been adjusted. Although you have 10 magic points per level, spells don't necessarily cost round numbers of magic points. You cast them by equipping them and then pressing the B button, and you can cast about 5 basic fireballs for every magic point. You have to use magic to defeat bosses, so being generous with those magic points and how much spells cost is really appreciated. One major problem with these early Ys games, and Ys 2 in particular, is that a lot of the terrain looks exactly the same, and the dungeons are huge. Here's the map of an area a little bit later into the game. It's easy to wander in circles just because everything looks exactly the same. I'm usually pretty good with weird landmarks and these things, but I get completely turned around in Ys 2. The game also requires that you spot pixel-sized items lying on the ground. That kind of item hunt has never been fun. Ys 2 has a lot of rough edges due to being a very early RPG, but it's still pretty well loved in Japan. Even this Famicom port had people really enthusiastic about it at the time. But even in 1990, there were better versions of Ys to play. And these days you have more versions of Ys 2 than you could ever possibly go through. I'm pleased that Ys 2 was such a huge improvement over Ys 1, but I think I would play it just about anywhere else.